Hello everyone, this is ACHAI Akaya, and this is Game 2 of the third place matchup in the Go4SC2 tournament, tournament series number 7, and as I mentioned, this is Game 2 in the series to play for third place, and I will be shoutcasting the finals as well. But last game, Zeerax, the Protoss player here, spawning as the green Protoss in the bottom middle, taking on Frequency, who is actually playing as random. Last game he spawned as the red Terran. This game he is the red Protoss on the right side, and last game they of course played on Desert Oasis, which is a 1v1 map, so both players knew where each other were. That makes early pressure a little bit easier to do because you don't have to worry about scouting your opponent and basically going into a rush blind without knowing what's going on. But it, of course, Lost Temple here, which is what we're playing game number 2 on, is a 4-player map, so they are going to have to do a little bit of scouting before they really plan out their full strategy, although it looks like Zeerax is actually going to find Frequency on his first attempt, so he's going to get all the scouting information he needs, and at the same time it actually looks like Frequency is sending his probe in the correct scouting direction, so both of these players having pretty good sense to find out where their enemy is, although logically it does make sense the directions that they scouted initially, because by ground, these, when you start at the bottom middle or the middle right, these bases are the closest to each other by foot. Of course, if you're a Zerg player, your Overlord would reach the base on the mid left here a little bit quicker, because the amount of distance you have to travel by air is slightly shorter than what you travel to the right base, or of course the top base, just because of the way these minerals are laid out, as you can see here on the mini map. And it looks like the probe from Frequency trying to do a little harassment, doing a little bit of damage on that probe, but not getting a whole lot in. And Zeerax does have an early gas already, so we will be seeing him tech a little bit quicker than Frequency. It looks like Frequency opting to go pylon, gateway, pylon, and he is cranking out a couple of early zealots trying to get some pressure on. And it looks like Zeerax is going to continue to scout here and see if his opponent does have the early gas, which he does not. And I gotta think that since he has seen that gateway and knows that it's being chrono boosted, that there are going to be zealots coming into his base very shortly. And of course he is having to chrono boost his own gateway now and getting down the Cybernetics core, so we're going to see some pretty early sentry or stalker play, it seems like, from the green Protoss here, Zeerax. And of course Zeerax is up 1-0. He did win that first game against the Terran Frequency, because he was playing random. He did get Terran the first game, so he is up 1-0. So if he can hold on and win this game, then he will clinch this third place with a 2-0. So Zeerax, it looks like, getting his pylon hit on a little bit, although he does have one zealot of his own and another one coming out right now, but it looks like Frequency is continuing to stream zealots into the base of Zeerax, so he is going to have to respond by getting possibly another gateway here relatively quickly, or maybe even pulling some probes off of his mineral line, although he is able to take down one of those zealots. So, and that probe going down as well. So at this point, actually, Zeerax has managed to take a slight advantage, although there is another zealot coming in, but a couple stalkers at this point warping in for Zeerax. So if he's able to micro those properly, he should have no problems holding these zealots off once those come out. And the first one just now finishing. Going back to Frequency's base, he's just now getting the Cybernetics core and his gas, so a little bit behind on the tech right now. And if we take a look at the income tab, we can see that both players are relatively even on minerals, although it looks like Frequency does have a little bit of an edge. But of course, with the amount of gas that's being harvested by Zeerax right now, he has a lead in that by a pretty good margin. So although it looks like Frequency is getting up his other assimilator as well, so he's going to be catching up in that regard. But it looks like pretty good probe saturation here so far, although he is continuing to crank them out. Again, in case you aren't aware of the economy in StarCraft 2, basically you want to have around 2 probes, 2.5 probes per mineral patch, which basically allows you to mine at full saturation. So that is basically what both players are going for, and as you can see, he's continuing to crank probes out to get to that spot. Another gateway and a robotics facility going down for Zeerax at this point, so we may see some Immortals here pretty quick as well, which are very, very strong units. So, and actually Frequency having to pull off some of his probes to defend against this harassment, although he's got 3 zealots and it looks like 5 or 6 probes out here defending, and these stalkers are going to be able to snipe a zealot, it looks like, and possibly a couple probes, and actually going to sneak into the base here, although this sentry is going to be able to block him and slow him down a little bit. One of these stalkers very, very low on health right now, although it looks like the other stalker is going to remain behind and take down that sentry, and he is now going for the mineral line, although these probes are going to take him down because he does not micro away properly, although he does have one other stalker in the base still. 2 zealots trying frantically to take it down. That stalker getting 1 kill on the probe, although he does have 3 kills overall, so taking out a couple of zealots as well. Going back to Zeerax's base, he does have the warp gate technology research, so he is going to start warping in some units here pretty quickly, which again, you do get a little bit of a production boost because the amount of cooldown on the warp gates once you warp units in is slightly less than having units queued up and just building that way. And it looks like we're going to see a Protoss Observer come out before he gets the Immortal, which I would expect to see an Immortal here pretty quickly. Actually, no, he did get the Robotics Bay. I'm sorry, I missed that. So he's going to be getting a Colossus out, which could be pretty powerful against the mineral line if he can manage to get it up there. Although it does look like we have a lot of zealots here. 4 zealots and 1 sentry moving out now to put some pressure onto the base of Zeerax. And Zeerax putting out a pylon at the entrance of his base to make warping in units out towards his ramp a little bit easier. And of course, making sure that there aren't any proxy pylons or anything like that coming up on the outside of his base that would allow Frequency to warp in units inside of his base. And it looks like Frequency is going to be sticking with just the Observer. He is not going to be going with the Colossus tech, so that really the main difference between these two builds at this point, despite the fact that Frequency is slightly behind Zeerax in the build order as far as how quickly he has teched. And the first Colossus coming out now, and another one building right now, and he is researching the range upgrade, which is going to be very powerful against this primarily Zealot army, especially if it's microed properly against these zealots, although he does have more sentries coming out right now. But with the range upgrade, the force fields that are put down from the sentries are actually not as effective because the Colossus has absolutely no problems shooting over that force field. So force field from sentries not as much of a factor when Colossi are in the mix. But Frequency does have his Observer out over the green Protoss base, so he is going to be able to see exactly what's going on. He knows that Zeerax has a Colossus out, and he is going to see this next one pop out, as well as the Robotics Bay researching that range upgrade, so he will be aware of exactly what's going on. And his response at this point is the Immortal. The Immortal, of course, is going to soak up a little bit more of that damage and actually only take 10 damage per shot from those Colossi, which is going to help him a little bit. But the problem is that Colossi, of course, do splash damage as well. So even though the Immortal itself will not get taken down as quickly because of those hardened shields, any units that are in the line of fire when those Immortals are getting fired on by those Colossi are also going to take damage. So, but luckily that attack, again, the Immortal does a pretty good amount of damage, plus 30 against armor, which is an insane damage bonus. And as you can see, the Colossus is an armored unit, so it's going to take all of that damage, basically 50 damage per hit from the Immortals, which is a lot of damage. So if he can manage to focus fire down those Colossi, which he does have 3 now, so that may prove to be somewhat difficult, as he does only have 2 Immortals, and it looks like he's actually putting them into a warp prism here, so possibly going to try to transport those out, and that pylon going down very quickly out at the ramp there, and it looks like these Colossi are going to push up into the Protoss base, and you can see those Immortals just got 1 shot each off on this one Colossi, and already it lost all of its shields and a little bit of its health. So there you can just see how powerful those Immortals are against the Colossi, and of course very powerful against the Zealots as well. Although it looks like they're taking too much damage from these Colossi here, almost losing all their shields to those few Colossi shots that they did take. And those Colossi, of course, because of how tall they are, can see up onto this cliff. So they are going, and with that range upgrade especially, are going to be able to snipe this gateway without really taking any damage from the Protoss player Frequency, it looks like. And a lot of Zealots here to back up these Colossi from Zeerax right now. Oh, and both of those Immortals taking a lot of damage. He now has 4 Colossi in his base. It looks like this game is going to be over very quickly. Zeerax just has an overwhelming force inside of Frequency's base, and now he has to pull off all of his probes to go try to defend against this, but the probes aren't attacking, it doesn't look like. There we go, now just starting to attack, and these Immortals coming out and trying to do some damage against these Colossi, but it's just too little too late, and Frequency is going to have to GG out of this game. So the random Frequency is going to GG out to the green Protoss player Zeerax. Zeerax takes 3rd place in Series 7 for this Go4SC2 tournament. We're going to be moving on to Shoutcast the Finals, which of course, as I mentioned earlier, I believe is a best of 5. So we will start that here momentarily.